Hello students, let's start our next chapter, atoms. So let's start from the first topic, Thomson's model of atom. So of course before Thomson, Dalton gave a brief introduction regarding the atom. He thought that different kinds of the atoms will be in a same kind, which means if let's say suppose X atom and Y atom, X atom will be in having the same kind of the properties and Y atom having the same kind of the properties. The matter which is made up of X and Y atoms will have the both the combined effects. So a basic rough idea has been given by the Dalton. Later Thomson gave an important model regarding the atom. According to the Thomson's model, which you can see the structure here. So an atom is a sphere of positively charged matter with electrons embedded in it. You can notice here. And such a kind of atom, which is nothing but will have positive charge uniformly distributed over that. Okay, and the electrons are like seeds of a watermelon or the plums in a pudding, and thus that's what the matter Thomson's model has been given as, or you can call it as plum pudding model too. Okay, the electrons are arranged in such a manner that their mutual repulsions are balanced by their attractions with the positively charged matter. Thus the atom as a whole is stable and neutral. Okay, Thomson's model was able to explain the in success, with a little success, the process like chemical reaction, radioactive disintegration, and in order to explain the spectra of the elements, all this kind of has been explained by the Thomson method. Okay, but the failures of the Thomson's model are, it could not explain several spectral series of hydrogen and other. So when later on you will understand that spectral series and all, that was unable to explain by the Thomson's model. And one more is, it failed to explain the large angle scattering of the alpha ray particles in Rutherford's experiment, which is our next topic. So this was the basic idea given by that J.J. Thomson, of course the person who discovered the electron. And remember, J.J. Thomson proposed that an atom is a sphere of positively charged matter with electrons embedded in it. Remember that J.J. Thomson proposed that an atom is a sphere of positively charged matter with electrons embedded in it. Remember, from each and every theory or from each and every postulate of different theories, we will go to the higher level of the next level of the theory. So that's why I am repeating the basic idea of. So J.J. Thomson proposed that an atom is a sphere of positively charged matter with electrons embedded in it. Okay, right. Now let's look to the alpha ray scattering experiment, which is done by Rutherford. Okay, look at the experimental setup. There is a lead box in which a radioactive element will be placed, which can give out alpha rays, and that this orange color one is nothing but the thin gold foil, which is here, you can notice, and this is zinc sulfide screen. The one dimensional setup, whatever we are actually watching is one dimensional setup. Later you will see what the actual setup was. Okay, so when this was given, the radioactive element starts giving out the alpha rays. So those alpha rays were passed through the thin foil and the scintillations have been observed on the zinc sulfate screen, ZNS screen, which is photographic film. So some of the rays got passed through and some has been reflected. So on and all, if you want to represent, this is what the representation. So if you consider the gold atom, look there, thin foil, right? So on and all this was. So but for a nucleus, if you consider the gold atom, part of the rays have been passing through there. Look here, the moment when the alpha rays, these white lines are nothing but the alpha rays, which you can notice here. So when those lines are coming closer to the nucleus, you can see how they have been deviated, because alpha rays are nothing but positively charged rays, right? So the moment when they came out, look at there how they are actually being bounced, and this was the maximum. Again the second half, the lower part of the nucleus, which is nothing but just for the symmetrical consideration, right? So hope you are getting the point here, right? if you plot a graph between scattering angle and number of alpha particles scattered there, as the scattering angle is increasing, look here, that's what, with larger inverse relation. Are we clear with this? Okay, so Rutherford with his two associates Geiger and Marsden performed this experiment of scattering of alpha particles from thin foils and obtained the very good insight of that particular result, whatever we are regarding the structure of the atom. Okay, and again I am repeating, an alpha particle is a helium ion, a helium atom from which both the electrons have been removed, which is nothing but He2 plus. So its charge is equal to plus 2e and its mass is nearly 4 times the mass of a proton. So while solving the problems, this is a much useful thing for you. Okay, are we clear with this? So after performing the experiment and from the graph also, we can clearly say that regarding which you can notice there, when we plot a in the here you can notice the graph, right, which is plot between the scattering angle and number of particles scattered, alpha particles, which are nothing but, okay, the above graph, this graph which is nothing but here, whatever you can notice here, reveals us that most of the alpha particles pass straight through the gold foil or suffer only small deflections. You can notice from the figure also, which we have shown, which we have seen here. A few alpha particles, about 1 in 8000, get deflected through 90 degree or more. A very few have been deflected more than like this. Occasionally an alpha particle gets rebounded from the gold foil, suffering a deflection of nearly 180 degrees. See, out of all these many, only one particular ray, look at this ray alone went for the maximum, this one, the central one. Are we clear with this or not? So keeping this all in mind, Rutherford came to the conclusion that as most of the alpha rays are passing through that atom, right, or that particular scintillations have been noticed on the zinc sulfate screen, ZNS screen, right. So as most of the alpha particles pass straight through the foil, so most of the space within atoms must be empty. This is his first observation, because more number of rays are passing through. To explain large angle scattering of alpha particles, some of them have been done, right, undergone there, right. Rutherford suggested that all the positive charge and the mass of the atom is concentrated in a very small region, and he named that region where the entire positive charge is located is nothing but nucleus of the atom. Understand that. Earlier J.J. Thomson gave us the idea of circular. Now look here, Rutherford bring the concept of nucleus here. So as very little, only one ray has been being reflected back, right. So that indicates when this positive ray will be get deflected, provided if there is a central positive charge. So this deflection, that too in a very rare situation, only occasionally, right, in the observations also we have seen. So as very one particular ray has been being reflected very rarely, thus the entire positive charge is being located at the center of that particular atom, and that he termed as nucleus. And remember here, the nucleus is surrounded by a cloud of electrons, I repeat, whose total negative charge is equal to the total positive charge on the nucleus, so that the atom as a whole is electrically neutral. So this entire positive charge will be balanced by the entire electron cloud. Understand the term again, electron cloud. So he has not given any idea regarding the position of the electrons. He just stated that there is a central positive charge, nucleus is here, and the electron cloud, which means we cannot exactly identify where it is. So there is an electron cloud in surrounding this particular nucleus. Are we clear with this? And moreover, you can notice that here the alpha particles are being repelled by the Coulomb repulsive forces. That's obviously right, which you can understand, because both are positive charges, which is nothing but these alpha rays and as well as the nucleus. Are we clear with this? So hope you are very clear with the experimental setup and as well as the result of this Rutherford's alpha ray scattering experiment. This was the actual setup, the view from the experiment, which you can notice here. See, source, lead cavity, what I told, source of alpha particles, a fine pencil beam of alpha particles will be made over is through the orifice. The oscillation, these alpha ray particles will be made to incident. Look here, there is a small slit through which this alpha ray particles will fall through, and this is what screen ZNS, okay, which are used to detect the alpha ray particles. You may get that doubt, right? Because in the previous we have seen that there is a ray which came bounce back. So how that can be noticed means this is what, look here, this is the gold foil. Most of the rays are passing through that, while a little are being scattered at this angle. A very few have been reflected at 180 degree, which means in the same path they have been retraced. Are we clear with this? Now this is what the observations, of course, which we have already made that in the explanation, which is nothing but the observations from that particular experiment. I told you right already, okay, right. Coming to the next one, distance of closest approach, which is nothing but the nuclear size. We got the idea that there is at the central part there is a positive charge, right, and that's what he made it as a nucleus. So out of all that, a very few number or very rarely one of the alpha ray is being scattered by 180 degree. That's it, right? Now keeping that in mind, we are going to calculate the distance of closest approach, which means the maximum closest distance up to which this distance, you can notice there, up to which this alpha particle can go and will bounce back. I'll try to show this once again. So when you incident the alpha ray, look here, in what way it is actually passing through, went back and again it bounced back. See, until this distance, until here it went, and again because of the repulsive force between this nucleus and as well as the alpha ray, it came back, and that distance R naught is nothing but distance of closest approach, the maximum closest distance up to which an alpha ray can travel to the nucleus is called distance of closest approach, and that gives us the actual entire value of this. Okay, right. Now let's understand this in a very detailed manner. One of the important topic for your 2 marks. Okay, so in the alpha ray particle experiment we have seen already that, let's say suppose if m is the mass of the alpha particle and having a velocity u, the center of the nucleus you can notice there, for the atom there is a nucleus, you can notice there, and as it approaches the nucleus, the alpha ray approaches the nucleus, it experiences Coulomb repulsion, and thus the kinetic energy gets progressively converted into electrical energy. That's it, right? Until then, whatever the kinetic energy this alpha ray is having will be get converted into electrostatic potential energy, since because at this particular point when the alpha ray came here, it comes to the momentarily at rest, and from there it again starts a momentarily rest, which means at that particular point there are two charges being separated by a distance, and of course because of their repulsion alone the alpha ray again bounce backs. So at that momentarily time, at that particular moment of time, for a very fraction of second, the entire kinetic energy of this alpha ray particle have been converted into the electrostatic potential energy. Keep that in mind. Okay, and according to the law of conservation of energy, I can equate them, right? That's obvious, because as there is no energy loss here. Okay, so at that distance R naught from the nucleus, alpha particle stops for a moment and then begins to retrace its path, which means you can call it as it has been scattered through an angle 180 degree. This distance R naught is called distance of closest approach, distance of closest approach, and at this distance R naught, the entire initial kinetic energy of the alpha particle gets converted into electrostatic potential energy. And what is the charge on the alpha particle? What is the charge on the alpha particle? Which is nothing but we have already discussed in the properties. Charge on the alpha particle Q1, I'm just calling it as Q1 equal to, can I write it as plus 2e, because both the electrons have been removed from that. Now on the nucleus, charge on the nucleus, can I write it as Q2, which I will call it as Z into E, where Z is atomic number, anyway protons. That's it, right? Protons, right? And anyway they are having equal charge, right? So Z into E, total number of protons into charge of. Are we clear with this? So ZE gives me that. This is of course plus positive, both are. Are we clear with this, ma? Now kinetic energy of the alpha particle, can I write it as half mu square? And the electrostatic potential energy of this system, in the earlier we have discussed in the electrostatics chapter, it's 1 by 4 pi epsilon naught q1 q2 whole divided by r. That's it now, and that's what I am doing here. Q1 is 2e, q2 is z into e. So can I write it as 2ze square? And that's what. Hence r naught can be given as 1 by 4 pi epsilon naught 2ze square by, of course, this is what. Are we clear with this? Or you can also write it to be as a, if I consider this also 1 by 2, anyway it can be 4k z square by mu square. You can also write it as, if I write 1 by 4 pi epsilon naught as k and 2 it's already here, mu square by 2, so fraction will get, this 2 will go to the numerator part, so which I can write it as 4k z square by mu square. Can I write down this as r naught? Either of the method. It's nothing difficult. You can remember in any of the method. Are we clear with this? And the point is here, the radius of the nucleus must be smaller than this r naught value. Remember this point. It's a very, very important thing. The radius of the nucleus must be smaller than the r naught. Radius of the nucleus. This value I am speaking about. Remember, this is nucleus. The radius of the nucleus must be smaller than r naught. Must be smaller than r naught. Keep that in mind. So in the alpha ray scattering experiment, the energy whatever utilized, the energy of the alpha ray particles which have been projected, it's a known value, and if we substitute those values and we can get, and of course the z value for the gold is 79, and if we go for substitution of all that, the r naught value is 41.3 Fermi meter. So r naught we got, if I substitute that z equal to 79 and all, let me erase this so that I will write down the values. So if I go for the substitution of z value and as well as the remaining values, which is nothing but the energy of, so z equal to 79 for gold, and for the energy whatever we have used, k alpha, I am calling it as kinetic energy of the alpha ray particles, is around 5.5 MeV. For that, it's a theoretical value, because when he is actually incidenting these alpha rays, they must be known value, right? With what energy I am actually incidenting and all. So practical values 5.5 MeV. If that energy has been incident on this 79, then r naught we got it as, 41.3 Fermi meter. Of course, Fermi is 10 power minus 15 meter. Fermi is 10 power minus 15 meter. 1 Fermi is. Keep that in mind. In units and dimensions, you have studied all this. This distance is considerably larger than the sum of the radii of gold nucleus and the alpha particle. The radius of a nucleus is in the order of a Fermi, where 1 Fermi is 10 power minus 15 meter. So are you getting the point here? So will be in the order of Fermi. This is of, we got it to be as 41.3, multiple factor, right? A larger value than Fermi. So that clearly shows this r naught, whatever you are actually taking, of course the radius of the nucleus must be smaller than r naught, or you can call it as r naught is greater than that radius of. Are we clear with this? Right, okay. Let's go to the next topic, impact parameter. This is also one of the important topic, but you are very fortunate that you don't have the derivation part for this. Anyway, in the group I will provide the derivation for you if you want, but it is nowhere useful for you, and you don't have that in syllabus. Just by considering the eccentricity and by drawing the asymptotes of this particular hyperbolic path, which you can notice here, we will solve that, and it's nowhere useful for you. You don't have that in derivation part actually, first of all. So it's a little typical derivation too, very difficult one, so not at all necessary for you. But anyway, if you want, I will provide that in the group. Okay, so first of all, let us understand what do you mean by an impact parameter, because the scattering of an alpha particle from a nucleus depends on its distance of the closest approach to the nucleus, or on an equivalent length called impact parameter, which you can notice here. So this is nothing but an equivalent of the closest approach. The impact parameter is defined as the perpendicular distance of the velocity vector of the alpha particle from the center of the nucleus when it is far away from the atom. You can notice here it is b, which has been represented. So velocity vector as they are traveling in the same straight line. So I have taken one such ray which has been slightly deviated, you can notice here, and this is the actual path. That's it, right? This was incident. So until it came closer this way, from here it has been deviated because of Coulomb repulsive forces. So if I consider the path of this, if I draw the tangent to this curve, you can notice here this angle is theta. Clear? Now at a larger distance, this distance b, perpendicular distance, which is nothing but this is the axis of the nucleus, and this distance is nothing but impact parameter. So which is nothing but the perpendicular distance of the velocity vector of the alpha particle from the center of the nucleus when it is far away from the atom. And from the experiments we can notice that for large impact parameters, which means when the rays are very far away, for this kind of edge, okay, marginal, for large impact parameters, the repulsive forces experienced by the alpha particles is weak because of the inverse square law. That's it, no? And the alpha particles passes almost undeflected. Notice that point. So obviously, because for marginal rays, when I consider in the experiment, you have noticed there is no deviation at all. They will go straight like this, no problem at all. Which means if I incident the ray here like this, it go almost undeviated, and that is what I am speaking about. Okay, right. Coming to the next one, for small impact parameters, if b is very small, which means if this distance is very small, then in that situation the repulsive force is large and alpha particle is scattered through larger angle. Obviously, imagine if b becomes 0, there is a maximum scattering which is nothing but 180 degree. Did you notice it that? Earlier we have already seen, okay, in the experimental setup. Now for a head-on collision, which is nothing but when alpha particle go for the straight collision with this, then b equal to 0. In that situation, what happens to the value of theta? It's obviously 180 degree. Therefore, shape of the trajectory of the scattered alpha particles, depends on impact parameter and the nature of the potential field, which means at this particular point positive charge, and thus creates a potential, right? And that's what I'm speaking about. And now, okay, are we clear with this? And the expression for impact parameter can be given as, you can notice here, ZE square cot theta by 2 by 4 pi epsilon naught half mu square, okay, or you can remember it as kZe square cot theta by 2 whole divided by half mu square, kinetic energy, which is nothing. Is that clear? Right. Coming to the postulates. So basing on all this, his experimental setup, closest distance of approach, nuclear size, impact parameter and all, Rutherford has developed his model of an atom, and that was his basic theory, which we can call it as. Okay, now let's look about that. Because on basing on the alpha ray scattering experiment, Rutherford proposed this model of an atom. Okay, let's look at the postulates of this Rutherford theory. An atom consists of a small and massive central core in which the entire positive charge and almost the whole mass of the atom are concentrated. This core is called nucleus. So his first and foremost idea is there will be a central positive core at that particular entire atom, and that positive core he named it as nucleus. Later it was found that the nucleus is of course very small, dense, very heavily dense region having a very high density, and that is composed of neutrons and protons. Anyway, in the next chapter we will discuss about that. We have a separate chapter called nucleus, there we will discuss about all this. Okay, the size of this nucleus, whatever he mentioned, that positive region is very small, and as small as when you compare it to the size of the atom, very small it is. So out of this entire small atom, this positive nucleus is a very smaller one. Okay, and this nucleus is surrounded by a suitable number of electrons, so that the total negative charge is equal to the total positive charge on the nucleus, and the atom as a whole is electrically neutral. Okay, so these electrons will revolve around this particular nucleus, and actually you can call that anyway this particular electrons, whatever, which are actually, so number, regarding the number, there is no actual clear specification, but we can state that in order to make that electrically neutral, we can thought that electron cloud, I told you already earlier. So that electron cloud, whatever it is, the total charge will be balanced by the total positive charge at that particular center of the atom, and that was the idea of, okay, right. The electrons revolve round the nucleus in various orbits just as planets revolve around the sun, and hence this is what Rutherford's planetary model we call them as. Okay, the centripetal force required for the revolution is provided by the electrostatic attraction between the electrons and the nucleus. So that was the reason why they are actually moving in the circular path, fixed paths, which are nothing but, and of course later this circular paths and all have been detailedly explained by Niels Bohr, what was the energy conditions and all. Okay, so the base, whenever we listen about we gave a naming right for J.J. Thomson model, it is plum pudding model or watermelon model. Similarly for Rutherford's model, it's like nothing but a planetary model. At the place of the sun there is a nucleus, and in the place of the planets there are electrons. Okay, right. Now let's look at the limitations of Rutherford's atomic model. Not many, but most important regarding the energy considerations. First of all, he was unable to explain the stability of atom. What do you mean by this? Because according to the electromagnetic theory, an accelerated charge, of course, which is the source of the electromagnetic waves, an accelerated charged particle must radiate the electromagnetic energy, that's obviously, and an electron revolving around the nucleus is under continuous acceleration towards the center, that's it, right? Whenever the electron is actually moving, which is nothing but the source of that, you can notice here. Okay, and because it is continuously radiating the energy, it must lose the energy. What happens when it continuously lose the energy and when it is moving in a circular path? It should continuously lose energy and move in orbits with a gradually decreasing radius. That's it, right? Like in a spiral of decreasing radius you can call. And thus the electron should follow a spiral path and finally it should collapse into the nucleus. And therefore Rutherford's model cannot explain the stability of an atom, because coming to the practicality, the atom is stable. That's it, right? Because accelerated charges which are responsible for the electromagnetic waves, okay, are actually moving in that particular continuous, because he stated that, right, keeping the nucleus as stationary, the electrons are actually moving in circular paths. So obviously these charged particles should radiate the energy and they should lose it, and as they are losing the energy, there is no other way for the electrons and they should go in a decreasing radius of the spiral path. Thus these electrons should fall into the nucleus, thus the atom collapses. But coming to the practicality, the atom is stable. This is the first failure, or you can call it as a limitation. Coming to the second one, it was unable to explain the line spectra of the atom, which means Rutherford model, in the case of this, an electron can revolve in orbits of all possible radii, so it should emit a continuous spectrum, but an atom like hydrogen always emits a discrete line spectrum, which means he told that already, that these electrons will move in all the spiral paths. So the electron can take whatever the energy level and they can go to the higher and they can go to the, they can come and there is a continuous way of, which is now, but coming to the later, when once the hydrogen spectrum was considered and when it was found, so then it was having a line spectrum, which is nothing but a discontinuous, having a fixed values of, which is a contradiction to this. Anyway, later we will go for the line spectra, spectral series of the hydrogen. There you will understand in detail what was the continuous differences and of all this. Are we clear with this? So this is what regarding the Rutherford's alpha ray scattering experiment, his postulates and as well as limitations. Are we clear with this?